gonna start, and I don't want you guys to start my session, because after the session we'll have the lunch. This session, the keywords on this session are performance and entity. I will talk about that in a few moments. First of all, I want to tell you a few things about our company. I work for Reea. We struggled to organize this event. We do all these crazy things like programming, and we have about 150 developers. Java, Reea, and so forth. You can read it there. I do PHP and Drupal, and I've added PHP there and asterisks because I secretly write code for Python and Drupal. I'm just kidding. Now I worked with a little with the coding igniter, and I also did some shops with REST. But other than this, the main goal or the main tasks are with Drupal, and I'm born and raised programmer at Reea. I have 2 years developing experience with Reea. You can find me on IRC, and I wanted to say about this. I wanted to mention the reason is the community on IRC, the Romanian community on IRC is small. We are only, I don't know, less than 10. And you are so many here, so maybe it's a good, it's a good idea to try to attend. If you like chatting, helping people, please do. It's funny that I was here before and I was talking to you guys, but all of a sudden, when I have a presentation, it feels like you're 3 times more than you used to be before. A few words about the Drupal team. At Reea, we are about 20 people, or more than 20 people that work or used to work with Drupal. As you say, we don't only work with Drupal, we do all sort of crazy things. And I just asked our friend Java. He told me that 5 years ago they did the first project with Drupal. So ever since then, they developed small, large, huge projects. I just want to advertise a few country modules that our colleagues are doing. This is for them. My favorite is the Better Watchdog UI. Basically, why I want to present this module is a separate thing from the presentation. But during the development in Drupal, we found that this was missing. For example, the cache flush module allows you to set up presets, and you can flush caches, in specific caches, or you can schedule them to run with Chrome. This is very useful. We use it for some of our projects. And the Better Watchdog UI exposes the watchdog. In views, you have book operation, so therefore you can delete, for example, the PHP errors, or you can filter them. Let's say if you trigger errors for your specific username, and this helps when you have 10 developers working on a website and they are using the error messages to trigger some errors. And that's enough for contribution. I'm going to start talking about this session. Why do I want to present this session? I don't know if you all ever heard these questions that are asked about Drupal. The first one is, will Drupal handle my, I don't know, how many nodes and how many users? And how many nodes, or the X is a big number. I don't know if you saw this question, or if you ever asked yourself this question. I did so while learning and developing with Drupal. And another good question is, what are the boundaries and the limitation of Drupal itself? Also, a reason for this session is that I was very curious about entity. I didn't have the time back then when I was asking these questions to test the entities. I'm sorry for those of you who are not Drupal guys. I will try to explain the terms, but This is mainly focused on people who work with Drupal, so sorry for that. So there are, you already know the modules that implement custom entities, right, like profile loader or whatever. And in 2012, in Arad, there were some awesome presentations about custom entities. So I was very, very curious, and I wanted to try it myself. So I made a plan out of these questions, and the plan was to make a compare what happens if you have a large number of nodes, how it will work with Drupal, and then what happens if you implement the same idea, the same data, with custom entities. And I always, like the title says, I always wanted to have or to see a working website where you have a million nodes. So at this point, I'm quite curious if you ever work, or from the project that you work for, do you have any projects that have more than, let's say, 100,000 nodes? Okay, please raise your hands. Okay, so that's not a big deal, okay. What about 500,000 nodes? Okay, we have winners. What about a million? Can I ask what do you store in those nodes? I mean, if it would be a blog post, maybe the topic would be tips and tricks for geeks, understanding women. No offense, girls, we are happy that we are here. It's just a joke. I hope it's not a bad one for you. So, basically the idea was to have to compare the nodes, what comes built in with Drupal, and then compare it with custom entities. And I just want to say that the perspective is the search. So of course, if you load a node load, even if you have so many nodes, it's okay. But the perspective is the search. And I will try to cover, of course, there are some other tools like Varnish, Memcache, where you can index content in repositories, so with Apache. But I was very curious, without these tools, what happens behind? What happens in Drupal? Why it would be slow? So I used, the setup is using MySQL, right? Because MySQL is the slower. The database is the slower because you store the nodes in the database, right? So I was curious why searching. I use reviews, of course, because it's easier to just add the fields there and test it, and you have then the Devel module that will allow you to see the page load and so forth, all these things. So the plan, or in other words, in simple words, was to build a product with default entities, with a standard installation of Drupal, and then create custom entities with the same data, migrate them, and then see the pro and cons. So that's what I did, and then compare the search with the views, searching with different fields and so forth. So I've learned a lot of things while doing this, and I think this is very interesting for those of you who are web builders, because you get a sense of what's going on under the hood. How does this work in Drupal? And it's also a good perspective for those of you who are developers and kind of know what's going on there, but it's a sum up of what's good and what are the other options other than indexing content with Solar or other tools. So let's see the product. As I told you, a very simple product. What does this product has? You can think of, I don't know, a bottle of engine oil for your car, right? What does this product has? It has a name, super duper engine oil, right? It has a description, it will make your car run with water, right? And then it has a manufacturer code. It has a barcode that in order to save to have a good way of expressing this information, you would store the manufacturer, the supplier, and the unit measurement separately, right? So I'm just talking as a level of schema how would you store this information, regardless of database structures and so on, right? So it's very simple. You have a product which connects to the manufacturer, which connects to a unit measurement, and then connects to a supplier. The reason for having all these things, if you think of a SQL database, is that maybe you have 1 million products, but the manufacturer are only, I don't know, for car parts, for example, there are only, I think, 300, if I'm not mistaken. And as for the supplier, it really depends on the company who's doing this. So you could have 10 suppliers then, right? So how would you do it with Node? I think this is not a miracle or inspiration for you guys because you already work with Drupal. The product is a node, which is basically a content type, right? And then you could use the name as the title, then you attach some fields. As for the manufacturer and the unit measurement, you could have a taxonomy, right? And the supplier can be a user with some fields attached, like address, physical code, and registration number, etc., etc. So this is not something new for you guys. For the others who are here and are not into Drupal, it's good to know that out of the box, Drupal will allow you to create this information via the UI. So you don't have to code anything. You just have to understand how it works. Think of, for example, Excel, right? You don't have to understand how Excel works in the background. You have to know what is capable of. Once you learn how to use it, you can use it, and you don't care how it stores information or how it does the math and so on. So that's it. Now I managed to import about 850,000 nodes. Don't ask me how it was a pain. I used the features and I was importing from some Excel files. That's not the point. The point is, or the goal is, to understand what are the limitations or why the search is slow or what I found out while doing this. So your biggest enemy would be the field API. All these fields that you attach to nodes or to users or whatever, how does it work at the database level? You may probably know that each field is stored in a separate database, right? Table. Thank you. So that means it is a good, I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, because it can be a good thing. For example, you can have a field attached to all your entities, and then you can search through all of them. So it's easy to have one table that is tagging your content, right? But in this particular case, when you have so much content, you have a lot of tables. And if you ask someone who's not a Drupal guy, and ask him, how would you implement this with a custom, I don't know, code igniter or whatever, Symfony? And he will tell you, okay, I will need, I don't know, 5 tables, 4 tables. So if you tell him you will have 15 tables, he will tell you, you are crazy, right? So, especially when you have so much knowledge, so many content, right? And the second problem, or not necessarily problem, but I could say it's a problem, for me is the revisions. You know that revisions it comes as a feature by default. And what it does, for each field, other than the data field, you also have a revision field. So other than the data table, you also have the revision table. What does this mean? Is that instead of having one table for the fields, you will have another table. The problem is that it's implemented in a way that even if you don't turn it on, it will create 2 tables anyway. So if we add all the fields and all the structure that I showed you before, and count the tables that are stored in Drupal just to see the product, then you will have around 30 tables. No wonder the search will be so slow if you are using, for example, user, even if you're doing your own queries. So I ended up with a database size of 5 gigs. It was bigger, and there was a particular table that had, I think, 1.5 gigs, and I had to erase it. It was safe to erase it, And I don't know if any of you had any experience with this. I wanted to ask you if you know what table I'm talking about.
Caching.
No?
Search index.
Because watchdog, I mean, if you save the content, yes, but you can. No, it's something else. It could be that one, but no. No.
Search index.
There's a bigger one. No. The taxonomy. So this is it was an enlightenment for me because all of a sudden, you know, I was working on my laptop and all of a sudden I had a huge database and I was like, what's going on? Why is it so big? And I started to compare all the tables. If you are not using the taxonomy, if you don't need the built-in feature from Drupal, there is a variable that you can turn it off. You can set it to false and it will no longer index your nodes when you add nodes and there are taxonomy kernels attached to that node. So for example, if you're using Solary, Apache Solary, and you have a lot of content, then maybe it's a good idea, and you don't work with taxonomy get nodes, or I don't know what the function is called. If you don't need that, it's a good idea to turn this off. Okay, moving forward, another problem with nodes, or at least with this structure, is that it's quite hard to create or to write your own SQL queries. Of course, you can use the field query, but sometimes you may want to query something specific, or so it's kind of complicated. I have an example in the next slide about that. What matters is that the test that I did with this 850,000 nodes, the search was between 10 and 40 seconds, depending on how many exposed filters I have. And of course, this is not affordable. If you think of, I don't know, this is a very simple structure. What if you have, I don't know, some invoicing or stock management or warehouses or things that get complicated, and it's not really an option. Of course, this is not a real case. I just wanted to test it out, but it's worth testing because you can see what's going on behind. So this is a quick copy and paste of one of the views generated SQL query, as you can see. And these are not all the fields, of course. So I didn't expose all the filters. Let's do the same thing with custom entities. Now, I don't know how many of you build custom entities, or okay, let's see. Okay, that's very encouraging. I can go now. Just kidding. So, and you wrote it with code, I guess, right? Okay, that's also safe. So, what are custom entities? Who would like to hear a few words about what are entities? No? 3? Okay. Well, basically an entity, the node is an entity. And the entity is, in fact, in SQL terms, a database. A table in your database, right? So the user is also an entity. And in a SQL, it's stored in the user table, right? So maybe for some, it's easier, especially if you're a web builder, it's easier to understand these terms rather than the abstract terms that it sums up your data and so on. So think of an entity as a table in your database. And the entities can have properties. And here, if we would build this with a custom entity, it's obvious that you can create 4 entities by code, if you want to. But this is not really, it doesn't really matter which option you choose. I will present later a UI for creating entities. And you could define, actually, I think this information is in the next slide. Yes? So, if you build it with custom entities, what are the advantages? If you build it with custom entities, you can move all the data that is stored in fields, and you can have this data stored in properties. What does this mean? You will get rid of all the tables, right? And the information that is stored in field tables will be stored in your entity table. Of course, you have to be careful when you're doing this, but in my case, this was a huge release because as you can see, I had less tables. It's really a matter of if you attach fields or if you don't attach fields for this structure, but you can end up having 4 tables instead of the 30 tables that you had before. And if you have this, it's obvious that the database size will be a lot smaller. So you can end up having the same structure with a 200 megs of database. And of course, if you are a PHP developer and you don't work only with Drupal, maybe you like to write your own queries, or there are some cases where you want to do some specific query and force some indexes, or it's easier to work with 4 or 5 or 6 tables than 30 tables, right? So it's easier to write the SQL queries, and also the search with the same structure. Once I moved all the data, don't ask me how, it was a pain. Once I moved all the nodes from nodes to entities, the search via views, whoops. And now you see what I'm going to talk about. Back. Okay, and what the search, as you can see, was between 2 and 5 seconds, depending on how many filters you have, or on how many properties you are searching for. So, just a quick note about creating your custom entities. Drupal, by default, when it creates your tables, right, it will create automatically the indexes. If you create your own custom entities, you will have to make sure that you will have the proper indexes. This is not done automatically, so you have to take care of that, and it's obvious that it works like this. This is, I don't know why it's filming. No. Okay, I just wanted to show you a SQL query where you can see that you are only joining 3 or 4 tables, and it's easier. This is the views query, and it's easier to it's easier to follow the code or even create your own SQL queries. That's the only purpose of this slide. So I just wanted to add or to sum up all this information in one big table. So if you compare the default entities with the custom entities, then with the default entities you have the field API. You are forced to use it because you can't do something else. Or you could use, I don't know, country modules that implement other entities, but again, you are forced to use fields. So there's no way to... And with the custom entities, you can use the properties instead. Move all the data from all these tables to the entity table. As I said, all fields are tables, the properties are stored in an entity table, right? With the nodes and so forth, you have more tables. With custom entities, you have less tables. The database size is that big with this node count. With custom entities, with the same entity count, is 200 megs. You are forced to use revisions. There's no, I mean, there was an initiative, I think, back in 2010. Our coolest chick, web chick, she wrote some posts about it, and there was a sort of an initiative to get rid of the revisions. And the reason is obvious. I don't know how many of you used revisions. I mean, it's, if you have a percent, yeah, you use it, but the percentage, you know, it's the percentage, maybe 10%, maybe less from all your projects are not using revisions. So it's there, you have more tables, but you don't really use them. And there is actually, I think nothing will happen in this area, as far as I know. I've asked around people who work with the field API, but The big good thing with the custom entities is that by default you don't have the entities and the revisions. The entities are revisionable, but you will have to do it yourself. Also, with the default entities, it's quite hard to create your SQL queries. It's easier with the custom entities, and the search timings speak for themselves. I've predicted a few questions. Let's say you want to create this project, and someone might ask, why would you want to create it with Drupal? Isn't Drupal slow? Or, I have a custom table in my Drupal installation. I use the node system and the CMS. So why would I want to? For me, it's fine. Just create a table. It's there. I know how to write the queries. Why would I want to entity the table? Or I don't know how to say it. Why would I create a table with an entity? And the answers are obvious. Of course, you have to decide for yourself if it works or not. But the quickest answer is that if you create entities in this way, you will let Drupal know about your tables. And the good thing about it is that there are a lot of modules that work with custom entities, for example, views. So all you have to do is create a table, but using an entity. And then, out of the box, you have search. Right? So you already have the listing of the entity. The list of your entities. Also, you can use rules and an entity reference, right, to connect with them, and all these cool modules that work with entities. A few words about why not using Solar. Maybe you like working with the tables. You like to have the feeling of the. I know exactly what's going on my tables. I want to export a specific table with all the information, and Solar will simply index your information. You need a separate service to do that. I just want to say that the tests that I did are this test, the search with the custom entity. The entity cache was not turned on, so you can do a lot more for caching to speed up. So it's just a comparison to see how it helps you to develop this way. So why not Solar? You need another server, or you can use a database search, but again, this will only index your data. It's not helping you working with the data. It will help you search the data. I don't know if any of you worked with the MongoDB or other non-relationship databases and implemented. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3. Okay, then we will talk. Please. Let me know what I feel about this, and I'm really curious. This is on my to-do list for next month. And also on my to-do list, I remember I told you about the no revisions. There is a module, someone contributed with a module that you can turn off the revisions, but I didn't test it, so I have nothing to say about that. That's also on my to-do list. Funny thing about test module, they say that once you enable it, there is no turning back. So it's like Hotel California, right? You can check in, but you can never leave. Okay, I have 2 more slides. While trying to create these custom entities, first I thought of creating them with code, and probably this is the best approach, but I wanted a fast developed one. So I really wanted to know what is going on there, and to be able to search them and to create them on the fly. And I found this cool module, Entity Construction Kit. Do you know about this module? Okay, what? Okay, then. What I liked about this module is that once you learn it, it's easy to reuse the code. There are some concepts in the module that you need to understand. I'm not going to demo it because I think you can demo an entire session about this module, but I think it's very awesome. I just emailed the maintainer of this module, and he confirmed that the latest build version, the 7.2 I think, is stable in production websites. If you feel like testing, in your free time, I advise you to try this module. Of course, it integrates with the Path Auto, and there are some control modules that go with this module. But basically, what this module does, think of the UI that you have with the nodes. You will have the same UI of defining your entities. So you can create an entity and it will create a table for you. It's fieldable, you can add fields to it, but also within the UI, it will allow you to create properties. You will have to write, I wrote, I think, for this entire project, less than 100 lines of code. It was completely original. I found it on a blog post. I copied and pasted and changed the function names, and I had it. So, but basically what I did was to implement how the column in the table, what is the column in the table, is a varchar or an int or whatever, and what is the behavior of this column. For example, what the form, the creation of the, so it will provide you the creation and so forth. Anyway, we can talk more about this if you want to, because we can, as I said, you can talk a lot about this module. Also, there are some presentations, I think, about this module. Now, there's this second awesome module that I found. Anyone knows about it? Reference dialog? Okay, only two. I have something interesting to say, and you don't know it. Just kidding. What is this module and why I think it's awesome? The reference dialog will provide you a nice workflow for creating referenced entity. I cheated, I just read from the table. Think about a node. You have a field of entity reference, and it's referencing a user. You have another field that is referencing the taxonomy. Now, what if you want to create the user and the taxonomy on the fly? What this module does, it will add a button, a link. When you click, it opens a dialog with the form to create a user. You save the user. The user is automatically put in the reference, in the field. So this happens, so it's easier to work with this. Also, if you are in a node edit form, right, and you already have the user references, you have the edit link. You create the edit, you click the edit, and there you go. But I think the power with this module is that the search dialog is a view. Why is this awesome? Simply because when you have so many entities, so many nodes, so many whatever you want, maybe the title for the node is not relevant. Maybe you have the same title for, I don't know, 1,000 nodes, and what's relevant for those nodes are other fields. So how does the autocomplete helps you? It doesn't help you. What you can do, you have the search button, you click the search button, it will open a view, and you can do whatever you want with the view. It basically implements a new display for views. You can attach that display to entity reference fields, and you can do search or whatever you want. So this is a huge improvement in terms of connecting entities in between, because as I said, the title maybe is not relevant, or maybe you have so many entities with the same title or label, or however you want to call it. So that's pretty much it about the reference dialog. If you will have questions, I can provide some sort of support. You find me on IRC. Support in the sense of it's not as easy as it seems at the first to configure it, especially the views. How to connect the views, and when you click on what you're looking for, to be able to connect it back there. There are some hidden tricks that you may, tricks in the sense of knowing. So maybe the documentation is not the best, but the module is awesome. So that's it for the references dialog. I hope you're hungry and you don't have questions. Yes, question. I don't know what is the timing, first of all. Okay, no, I can answer the questions. but I just wanted to know. So,
Okay, so I wanted to ask if you need to have multilingual site. For example, you had a product there, and maybe in that case you would need to use fields on entities, or of course you can put a property with the language and to make a target maybe for the initial entity. But which one would you pick, or what would you do?
so if I would use a field or not. So I didn't test this, but the latest version of the module that I talked about, the entity construction kit, I don't know how they do it, but they advertise that, not the latest, the dev version of the 7.3, they advertise that it's fully, so you can translate your entities. It has support for translations with the UI. I don't know how they do it.
So they have support for translating properties on the entities or something like
Sorry,
that?
but I don't really have. I'm just saying what I know about this, but I don't have the answer to your question. Maybe you can look it up and see.
I think so. Sure. Thank you very much.
Sorry if I didn't answer your question. But it's a good question, because this example does not cover the translation and maybe a lot of other issues or features.
Congratulations, great presentation and really great work for testing all that.
Thank you.
What I wanted to highlight is that sometimes you can do a balance between those solutions. And I give you an example. For instance, if you want to use a date time field, we have all the widgets and all the advantage of the Drupal. In this case, we can mix the solution, and so in the custom entity, which is fieldable, we can use also a field of date and time. So what I wanted to highlight, you don't have to, there's two separate solutions. First on the fields and the other one only on the properties. You can mix up those solutions in my estimation if you need the advantages like widgets, Drupal or something like this.
You have a point here, and I didn't add this to the presentation, but for example, in order to connect these four entities, I use the entity reference field. And the reason is simple, you can have the relation one-to-many. So if you have the foreign key, so the reference to, I don't know, the reference to the supplier as a property, then you are stuck with a relationship of one-to-one.
Yes.
Other than this, of course, you can use the image field and so forth. So yes, it's a mix between. So you have to decide whether you want to create. What fields should be filled and what fields should be moved properties.
All right. And the last question, because I see on Twitter that we have a problem.
Sorry.
It's nice that module that you suggested, reference dialog, but also inline entity form could be a solution, from my experience.
That's true.
Thank you.
I have to apologize for my bad voice. I have something on my neck. I want to sing something as closing my session, but I will skip that part because I have a really bad voice. So okay, please.
One small question. Have you ever tried MongoDB field storage?
No. That's why I asked. Please bug me if you ever used it. I would really like to know how you feel about it, because I will later on try to move all this stuff in MongoDB.
Okay, thank you.
No. If you have any other questions, I'm available at the lunch. Just before you go, we want to take a group photo, and please don't run around. We would like here. No, where?
In front of the...
Okay. Can we all meet in front of the hotel in like 10 minutes? No, 1 minute, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, okay. Do we get any prizes if we go there fast? No? Okay. Pictures.
Yeah, you get lunch afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
So please, everyone.